morning, guys. I am Patty Elhoff, the author of Upcycle with Decoupage, available on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Scoby Books, and several online retailers. Makes a very nice Christmas gift. Speaking of Christmas, I wanted to show you how we can make some of these Christmas ornaments, and we'll be using paper clay. And only one of these is decoupaged. But I'll tell you how we can make a couple of these, hopefully give you a couple of ideas. This is just a little church, and I decoupaged some paper over that. That was actually made with the paper clay using the pine leaf as a mold, one of my favorites. This is a heart that I made using a cookie cutter. And on the back I just have some script with tea dye over it. This is a key I made just using a regular old church key. This is not the same key, it's a different one. And then this is my favorite. This was actually an afterthought. So for this heart-shaped one, which was not difficult to do at all I did was took the main ingredient, which is this paper clay, and I rolled it into a ball and pressed the ball down, flattened it out. Then I took some wax paper, because you don't want this to stick to your counters, and if you have a rolling pin, you can use that. I still put the wax paper over it, and I just took a bottle. Took my cookie cutter, and what you're left with are these pretty hearts, and you can do them in different thicknesses. This one's pretty thick. It just takes longer to dry when you do it that way, but it is a bit sturdier. I took a stamp with script on it, and while it's still pliable, and stamped on the ink pad, put it down on the heart in a few different places, as you can see. Now that's the one side. I started to add the UT. So I used the embossing pad, just stamped it all over, and then I first took the ultra thick embossing enamel, poured it all over, and I used the heat gun on this one. And I just kept adding some more layers, and the final layer I added this mica. And I let it dry, and that's how that turned out. Now for the other side, I didn't want to do anything shiny or glittery. I still stamped the other side. And what I did was I took a tea bag and put it in a half a cup of water, put it in the microwave, let it boil, and when it cooled off, I took the tea bag out and I dipped this white tulle into the tea. I took the tea bag and I rubbed it over the surface of this so that it looks a little aged. And one other thing, I find that I use these bamboo skewers for everything under the sun. You can get these in any supermarket. And I put the holes in here and here. And this next one, I actually took the paper clay. Now the back is ugly. We're going to do a little trick with the back that I'll show you. What I did was I took a branch from the Christmas tree and I wet it so that it would not stick to the paper clay, and I pressed it down into the clay, not too hard, just enough so that there's an imprint left in the clay. What I did with this one was I took another ink pad, and it's just dye, and I stamped all over it, and this was when it was dry. By the way, I used my trusty bamboo skewer to make holes in the top where I wanted to hang it. And I outlined the branches with this 3D paint. On this one I actually cut the shape out. So I just took a nice sharp knife and I just went around the edges to make this almost look like a little leaf. And you can see I have the three-dimensional paint all around the edges. And then I outlined here, and it actually picked up the color of the stamp. I then put a clear top coat over this, and I sprinkled some very fine glitter onto it. And for the key, and I'm using a different church key than this one that I worked with, all I did, I pressed the key in, I tore all of the edges away, and I cut all along here. A larger key is better, obviously. And on this one, rather than paint it, what I did was I added a top coat to it. However, I used some of these pearl pigments over the surface of the key. So that's another idea. I made this. It looks really not too good to me. I took a piece of the paper clay and rolled it out, and then I kind of tore the edges, rolled up the sides, and the reason this is purple was that I just kept trying to make it look better. Taking this stamp, which is a pretty stamp, right? And I stamped it into the paper clay, but it didn't really come out too well. So I was left with this, and I said, yuck, it's just because it's dry, I can't do anything with it. But here's where it will come in handy, because now you can take flowers. This is wrapping paper that I just happen to love. I could take napkins. I can still work with napkins and decoupage on there. I can stick with a Christmas theme. Music notes. You could make it a beach theme tree. Or we can do a little bit of Christmas script and some words. I'm separating the napkin. Decoupage glue is on there. Place the napkin down. So just take some saran wrap or a baggie, press it down, and make sure you get those edges. And we're going to let this dry. This is now going to be a useful ornament, whereas when it was this side, not so much. And now for my favorite one that I mentioned was just an afterthought, but I love the way it turned out so much. I kind of want to put these all over. And all I did was I cut out the different sections separately. And you can use a regular old household knife. Sharp. So I pinched these two pieces. I laid down another piece underneath it, short piece. Then I took one thin strip and made a loop. And I'm trying to get that little indentation in there. Pressed it down in the center. Now this is going to take a little bit, a little bit longer to dry. And I did not put any holes in it because, as you can see here, I just put a ribbon around the base when it was all dry. This feels really sturdy, by the way. And you may have to work with it a little bit, play around with it a little bit. And here's a little trick to curl those ribbons on the end. Again, we take our bamboo skewer. Whoops. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned, you can use alcohol inks on these and the colors come out really pretty. If you have too much excess anywhere, just take your very sharp knife and cut it away. Tidy it up a little. And I just took the bamboo skewer again and gently rolled the paper clay on an angle and pulled the skewer out. You can put this in the oven, the paper clay, and that will speed the drying process. I've heard that it does shrink it a little bit. The very next thing that I did, once it was dry, was I took this really pretty, this is all stuck to my fingers, it'll come right off. This really pretty pearly pink nail polish that I had, and I applied 2 coats. So I did a light coat, I let it dries pretty quickly. Then I applied a second coat, and I applied glitter all over it because, again, if it's Christmassy, I want it to be glittery. I want it to show up in the tree with those lights. You may want to take that bamboo skewer and you can put a hole right through the center there that's thick enough or thin enough to put a string of pearls through. That is how you make the bow. And in the meantime, hey, thank you so much for subscribing to my videos. You know, I have a donate button on my page, my web page. So when you go to upcyclewithdecoupage.vpweb.com, right on the front page there's a little button for PayPal that says donate. And I have that up there because a few people have told me that they wanted to send me something or thank me in order that I could keep making the video. So I did put a donate button up there, and thank you so much for those little donations. They're helping me out. And I'll be back next week with another video. In the meantime, if you've got any questions, I'm on Facebook at Upcycle with Decoupage, and you can ask me questions. You can even show me your work over there. And I will be happy to help you. And have a Merry Christmas, you guys. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.